Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I'm your host, Andrew Davis. And this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now, you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials, and the company has also printed so many successful Kickstarter campaigns, a bunch of them you have even heard about on this very show. It currently offers services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, and Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com, and right now, listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a order to get a 5% discount on their first order. So that is Mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. Also, I got a BCW supplies code. Use Pop Anime Comics to get 10% off your order. I got a t-shirt, descriptions up above. It's Gundam shirt, everybody. I got my metal cards, eBay. It's up there. Check it out. And without further ado, I have, the Cthulhu Invades Wonderland team. And I figured before we go into what Cthulhu Invades Wonderland is, I would give everybody a chance to sort of introduce yourselves, because I know some of you, I don't know others of you. Where can people find you and check out and all that jazz? So I don't know who wants to start.
My name is Pete Rissett. My daughter Emily, she's a really great artist, and she really wants to work with Matt and Steph over at Symmetry Creations.
Absolutely.
She wants to get a variant cover in for Misfits Clubhouse. Oh, wait. My name is Matt Knowles. I am from Symmetry Creations. I am part of the team with Steph Cannon, and with James Sims, who did the story Tarts that is in the book. It's about the Knave. And now I'm going to pass it over to my good friend LK and Gino. Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Hey everyone, I'm LK and Gino. I'm a writer and small publisher. I have my comics Fangs and Foul Play came out, crowdfunded last year, officially in everybody's hands this year, 2022. You can find me at headlessgnomes.com or fangsandfoulplay.com, and my piece in Cthulhu Invades Wonderland is with Abby Butler as the artist, and we wrote about the White Queen, and our story is called Jam Today. We're going to go to Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I write American Dreams, which is a steampunk superhero story, which was on Kickstarter last year. I'm also now doing my own Kickstarter for Night Raft, which is a 90s-influenced anti-hero story about an unconfident man who gains massive amounts of power, and there's a kind of eternal war between the two personalities. And with Damon Horn on art duties, I'm the writer of the Dodo story in Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. And I guess it's now up to Pete.
That's Pete. Well, what Matt said. So I'm Pete Risette. You can kind of find me on Twitter at Pete Risette. I mostly kind of retweet like Travis and Jerome from Orange Code more than anything else. I'm not terribly active there, but you can find me there if you are so inclined. I do some editing for Jonathan Hedrick's Quicksand series. I do some editing for Orange Cone from time to time. I'm also one of the proofreaders for Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. And I wrote a great story about the Four Spades. That artwork was done by Warren Brown. And I'm also the father of a very talented 16-year-old artist, Emily, who can be found at Emily R. Inks on Instagram. It's probably where she's most active, and she did the art on the Dormouse story that Jake Hewer wrote.
And what about you, Phil? Where can people find you, who you are, and all that stuff before we really dive into everybody's stories?
Oh, well, I'm mainly a colorist, but I also do pre-press, editorial, a little bit of art direction, graphic layouts, dabble here and there, little voiceover work. But yeah, I worked on War in the Garden over at Cthulhu. I've recently just finished, and we got out White Devil over at Silverline Comics. We've got Kaiju Mania coming up here in about a month and a half over at Eighth World. And yeah.
So obviously, everybody just introduced themselves. Obviously, the reason why I did that, for those who are wondering, is that I know a bunch of you, or two of you, and I don't know the other three.
No way. Who are you, Andy? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. Oh, Phil knows exactly who I am. See, Phil knows me way too well, and that's the
I know
problem.
Matt too. I've met Matt a few times in the past, man.
Yeah,
Still
what's going on,
rocking,
Phil?
brother?
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Absolutely.
All right.
So obviously, I don't know who wants to take this, but just so everybody's on the same page, because a bunch of you are going to know this story and know Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, and a bunch of you are going to be hearing about this and have no idea what we're talking about. So what is the basic premise? And I don't know who's the most qualified to kind of tell what Cthulhu Invades Wonderland is before we really dive into every single story and what's going on.
Well, I think there's a bunch of us on here. I think that Pete definitely could take part of that too. When I'm at our tables at Comic Cons, we normally have the Cthulhu Invades Oz book, and one of the things that we tell people about Cthulhu Invades Oz is that one of the neat things about these anthologies is that Travis, the curator of it, makes sure that there's a single story thread throughout these books. It's not just a book that's got a bunch of, LK's got a 5-page story and Pete's got a 5-page story and Daniel's got an 8-page story, and they're just a bunch of random thoughts. Travis really tries to make sure that there is a consistent arc all the way through it. And one of the neat things he did on Oz was, if, say, LK's story and Daniel's story didn't go exactly the way that he wanted them to, he would actually go and either he or someone else would write a piece in between to connect it back up to make sure that the reader gets this full arc. Now, Cthulhu Invades Oz was an ambitious project. This one blows it out of the water as far as the ambition behind it, the complication behind it, and the thought behind it. Travis really gave everybody this big story piece between the loyal and the madness to put their characters in. That's kind of the framework. Pete, I'll throw it over to you, even though I'm kind of putting you on the spot by saying that. That's just the general, the framework of what the book is. And Pete, I'm sure you've got things that you've talked to people about how you see the book, but that's how I see it. I think it's neat in that respect.
And I think that's the big thing, is there's this kind of continuous storyline that goes throughout the book. I mean, and as it's mentioned, this is a sequel. So Cthulhu previously invaded Oz, and at the tail end of it, he got bored and he wanted to look for other places. So his next stop is Wonderland. So this is a sequel to the original story. We have, it's 200 plus pages. Each story in there follows along that storyline that Travis has set, where Wonderland kind of gets into this civil war and Cthulhu invades in the middle of it. It's 200 plus pages. I'm trying to remember how many creators are involved in this. It's a ton.
Over 30.
Yeah, each team, it's a completely different team with different people writing it, different people doing the artwork, mostly the same letterer, so it's consistent throughout. And it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, people pick the Cthulhu Invades Oz up, just kind of when they're wandering by at cons, and it's almost an instant sell for everybody. If you like Cthulhu, if you like Wonderland, if you like Oz, you need to back this book.
So to even talk about that, and obviously the Oz book, and I read the Oz book, and I thoroughly enjoyed the Oz book, and me and Travis spoke about it, and he was on my show, and it's one of the best things that I backed, I think, last year or the year before. And I've been dying for this book to come out, and I've been keep on bugging Travis, because I like the fact that you guys explored Oz and then Cthulhu, and I'm not a big Cthulhu fan, and I am curious with how all of you sort of came into Oz, and even the fact that it's a sequel, and you're working with so many talented people, both directly and indirectly, and you're also tackling Wonderland. And I know it's a lot of things to throw at it, but Wonderland has been done in so many ways, and this is just another way how to do it. And so what is that like for each of you? Because obviously Cthulhu is extremely popular. There's a few Cthulhu books that are doing really well. Obviously Russell Nolte's book is doing very well with Cthulhu, and that just, I think, funded either today or yesterday, I believe. And also Wonderland with Zenoscope and a variety of other companies has done it. So what is this like for you to be working on such a cool property, all of you, and really telling interesting stories, but also giving a refreshing taste of these stories at the same time?
And I could start with that. For me, it's like Cthulhu is almost to the side for me with this book. I was a huge Wonderland fan as a kid. I'm one of those nerds that had the collected works of Lewis Carroll before they put them together in a collection. Loved all of his work with it. So it's, with Oz, a lot of what Travis was trying to do was to kind of almost write a love letter to Oz and mix in all of this cool stuff. And I feel like this is really what's happening here. People absolutely love both of these properties, everybody that's involved in it. So it's a no-brainer. You've got people that love Cthulhu, like Russell loves Cthulhu, loves that whole mythos. You've got people that really love Wonderland and everything in between. And I think it really shows in everything that I've read so far.
It's
I don't know
also,
if anybody else wants to chime in.
it's also just interesting just to find that whole dread and horror angle and just applying it to some of the most beloved characters in fiction. Because Wonderland is such an inevitable part of it. Because every kid in the English-speaking world and beyond is exposed to Alice in Wonderland either through the Disney films, or because there have been several Disney films, or for the books or any other sort of adaptation. And then you have Lovecraft, who not only has Cthulhu but all these other creepy, dread-inducing things. And it's just two interesting canvases to combine and paint from. And sometimes just looking at it from different ways. For example, in my story, the Dodo story, you don't see any classic old gods or Dagon fishmen or anything, but I give the sense of fear and dread you would get from a Lovecraft tale.
Yeah, because obviously, as I stated, I am not a huge Cthulhu guy. And so all the Cthulhu stuff for me is sort of brand new, and I get some of it, and I've researched some of it, but I am looking for a new Alice in Wonderland story. Obviously, I come from the world of Zenoscope, and Wonderland was brilliant what they did, and it holds up to this day still, almost 12 years after the fact that they did it. And I'm looking for almost new interpretations because I love Alice in Wonderland. I love Oz. And that's what I find so interesting about this story is that I'm like, what would happen if you invaded Wonderland? And to me, how would these characters interact with each other? How would they interact? Would they befriend each other? Characters who don't like each other, because the Red Queen is crazy. And the Red King is sort of, I guess, lazy and doesn't know what the hell's going on. And how would these characters interact when an invasion comes about? Would they go against each other? Would they unite? Or would they side with Cthulhu? And it's so interesting because each of you has touched upon a different thing that would happen with these characters. And that's what I think is so cool about this, is that it kind of presents an external factor into the world of Alice and into the world of Wonderland. And so what is that like for you guys to really play off on that and even build that out and also present the whole complicated situation?
Well, as I said, I'm probably one of the few stories that actually don't feature prominently a major Lovecraftian character or major Cthulhu mythos character, but it still has those creepy aspects you would expect from those stories. There's definitely allusions to that. And this is a character that technically is loyal, but is taking the desperate measures to protect his home. That's why the story is also called The Last, and there's a little hint to why the story is called The Last of Its Kind. That's all I'm going to say without going to spoiler territory.
And that's kind of one of the things that we had to decide too, was, is our character loyal or mad? So each of us had to take that into account with our character and be like, okay, what do we think that they would do, and how is that going to? Well, luckily, most of us didn't have to think about where it was going to fit so much.
Right.
That's Travis's job.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to even talk about that, because obviously, and I don't know how much we want to reveal about the curtain, but a bunch of you, I think most of you, some of you worked on Oz, and then some of you might have been brought in for this book for the first time. And I'm assuming that Travis sort of reached out to you and said, hey, I know you were in the comic world, know what you did, and did he assign you a character? Did you choose your character? And then what parameters were granted to you? Because that's something that's fascinating, because I don't think you guys had to necessarily say, oh, this story is going to be from pages 23 to 35. That was more Travis's job and where everything fitted into it. But at the same time, what guidelines did you have? Because anthologies are tricky sometimes with that, and especially if you want a common thread to go through.
And it was pretty much, here's the list of characters, and people sort of kind of fought over them a little bit. You know, there were some characters, people, like, I think there were probably about 5 or 6 people that really wanted Caterpillar, right? You know, it's sort of how it was. There were a few of us.
This is Caterpillar.
Yes, that's the
There
Caterpillar.
we go. There we go.
Yeah, and that was.
So three guys got free strike.
It's okay. See, you showed one of the important ones in the middle, which was the Dormouse story that my daughter illustrated. But but it's, you know, it's like that with when it came to the writers. I mean, she listed characters. What do you want to do? And it was kind of funny because the idea that I had gotten specifically really was dealing with the spades, because I thought, during this invasion, it would be really funny if the spades, or, you know, really interesting if the spades kind of, their entire loyalty is to their rose bushes. They've been trying to tend these things, and now they're under attack. And so I had this idea in my head, and, you know, so he just says, "What do you people want?" And I was like, "Cards." And then like 4 other people were like, "Well, I want cards too." So we split them into suits, and so a bunch of the card stories are actually about specific suits. And so we did a few things that way, but for the most part, it was just kind of people saying, "I want this," and
Well, we did have to pitch. We had to pitch for our
Sure.
character.
We
And I
actually
went the dodo because I thought no one else is going to choose the dodo. Everyone else is going to choose all the big characters. No one's going to choose the dodo. Because I wasn't in the Alice book, and as soon as I heard Wonderland was going to be the next book, and I love Wonderland. My dad's a huge fan of Wonderland, so I recently heard it was Wonderland. I'm like, Travis, I need to be in this. So
we actually pitched for a character, and Travis and he had come back and said, "Okay, this doesn't go with the vibe of the book." And so we had pitched one of like the main characters, and we were like, "Okay, we're going to take it the other direction. Let's go find the most obscure character that nobody even knows what they're about, and see if there's something cool about them." And I'm like, I'd never even heard of the Knave, and the Knave gets accused of stealing the Queen's tarts, and we're like, "Dude, we can do something really cool with this one." And so we got to play the middle ground with the Knave. We're like, the Knave is disgusted he's been accused of stealing the tarts. And so he's just like, "Screw you guys. You want to accuse me of this? I don't have time for this crap." And so we got to play that middle ground between the madness and the loyal with our character, and kind of make him like a double agent in a sense.
So what is that like? Because obviously both the World of Oz and World of Wonderland and that stuff has so many characters, and some of this stuff is really all the way to the side and is obscure. And then there's main characters, you know, the Turtle's a big one, obviously the Red Queen, the White Queen, the Red King, certain, you know, suits. The Mad Hatter's an obvious one. But what is that like when you're trying to figure out and pitching and saying, "Hey, what characters are here?" And I don't know if you had a character, you got the list, and then you had a pitch, and you're like, "Who the hell is this in Wonderland?" Because that can be a lot of fun too, because then you're like, "Oh snap, I actually now need to research who this character is." And there's some really cool stuff going on with this character, because I know a lot about Wonderland, but the idea is that I don't know everything about Wonderland. And there's some characters I'm like, I never heard of these characters. So what was that like? Because that could be a blast too. And then people are going to be reading this stuff and be like, "Man, I didn't even know this character existed." So what was that like, even doing that? And thinking, "Oh, this is kind of cool. And I see something in this character, and I didn't know they existed," for lack of better word.
Well, in the case of the dodo, in the book, he's basically the pompous guy who leads the caucus race around circles. And I'm thinking to myself, because I wanted to web the dodo, because again, he's a lesser known character. I'm like, it's a dodo. It's probably the last of its kind, and I started going with that direction, along with probably the most twisted take on the caucus race possible. And that just fit. As you can see, you know, you can tell the dodo here is immensely pompous looking. He has a pocket watch like the White Rabbit. He's dressed as an old Victorian gentleman. But again, the title of the story, as you can see in that art, is "The Last of Its Kind." And basically, this is a nearly basically extinct species. It's going to be desperate to survive by any means. Any means.
Yeah, and so even to talk about that story, because obviously I know the Dodo, and I know exactly that it's supposed to be a caricature of Lewis Carroll, and it's supposed to be him injected into his book. And there's a lot to play with. And obviously, also, the Dodo is satirical. It's also supposed to reference political caucuses. It is an extremely political character in what it is doing, and it's supposed to mock, in a lot of ways, politics. And that was the intention, and a variety of other stuff. And so, what was this like? And I think this applies to all of your characters, is that what do you actually take that Lewis C. Carroll wanted to put into those characters? What do you say, hey, I don't need this? And then how did you deal with now you're in a war, and how did these characters evolve? Because with the Dodo, no offense to, and the story says that the Dodo the last of its kind. I mean, Cthulhu wants to 86 him because he's going to be a problem ultimately, it seems. And, and the way that the story reads, and instantly you get it, right? I mean, it's not that hard to understand that the Dodo bird went extinct. And so what was that like? Because obviously, if the Dodo is extremely political, there's going to be a bunch of political moves the Dodo is going to make.
I actually didn't go political with this. I actually went straight horror. And because it's basically a story of someone so desperate to survive in the middle of a war that he's willing to do some pretty unthinkable things to his friends in order to increase his own survival, which in a way is political, knowing how politicians, especially incumbent politicians, will want to protect their power. But ultimately, it's desperation and survival, and the depths and depravities you'd go just to push your survival and to save everything you want. And it just means a lot of happy, fun-looking animals are about to face sheer terror.
Yeah, I think
to even talk about that, and I'm curious about how everybody else feels, is that, and I go back to this, is that like, what parameters did everybody have in this? Because obviously there's some pretty hard things that happen in this book, and there was some pretty hard things that happened in the Oz book too. And so, like, did anybody like? And that's what I'm super curious about, because obviously you need a common thread. And so were there things that you couldn't do in the book and in your stories, or seeing other things? And again, I don't want to reveal how all this sausage was made per se, but at the same time, I mean, you got a war going on. It's not a pretty book. There's some pretty fucked up shit that happens in this book. You got Cthulhu invading Wonderland. I don't think that, it's going to be a happy-go-lucky time, and you're not going down the rabbit hole per se.
I don't know how it worked for anybody else, but I know that one of the things that was one of the parameters given at the beginning was you control what happens with your character, but if something is going to happen to your character, you need to let the group know, so that way if like LK is 3 stories down from where mine is and she was going to use my character, she's not having him in there when, say, we killed him off. And I'm not saying we did that, but Travis wanted to make sure that was known, or if we wanted to use someone else's character in the story, we needed to make sure that Daniel's got X. I mean, we didn't use the Dodo spoiler, but like, let's say Davey had a character that we were going to use. Hey man, who's got the Red Queen? We needed to make sure that we knew what that character was doing, or even if we had some concept art, just to see if the version that we had in our story was going to be somewhat compatible. I'm not sure if that's the same thing that happened for Phil or Davey or Pete and whatnot, but that was the thing for us, that, hey, make sure that you're not doing something to the character that's going to make the story be impossible to have a thread run to it without letting people know.
Yeah, somewhere deep on that, there's this great thread of people discussing which cards were going to be in which story, so we could make sure that if anybody was going to kill off a card or something like that later on down the line, it wasn't being used again. So there's a great deal of collaboration with regards to that sort of thing.
And can you all hear me? Sorry, it's my first.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
It's your turn.
Great. Yeah. And hi, Andrew, and everyone I haven't met yet. But definitely, I think what you're going at, Andrew, is more of that control. And I think the control that we had was just over our characters. So we focused on character stories, and I think there was larger powers that be, and it helps with the context, right? You have a war, you have these individual characters that are getting their own piece in this war, and this war is over a whole land, so it's covering a lot of different lives, and we just picked that one of microscopic lens to look through that character and see what sort of character motivation they're going to have, and just have that story affect them on sort of an individual level. And then somebody at the, I think at, you know, Travis and the other creators levels are just sort of stitching it together at the end.
Because obviously, and then I'm going to let LK speak, because it's the idea that one little thing in one story could fuck up the entire book. It is what could happen. It's kind of like if you kill, you know, we'll use Oz. If Dorothy was a central part of the story and you kill off Dorothy 3 pages in, but Dorothy's the solution, or Dorothy's going to team up with Cthulhu and somebody kills off Dorothy, it fucks up the entire book. And so it's very complicated. I don't envy Travis's job on this, you know, by any stretch of the imagination. But what were you going to say? Okay, because that's where I was sort of going.
In general, we were supposed to really just use the one character, but I know that there were a couple stories that used other characters and fed them. So in that case, you know, people did need to be aware of what was going on. And I think Alice has a couple stories because she's like the main character. But for the most part, most of the characters show up like once, and that's namely it. There was also like, somewhere near the beginning, there was like an arc where it was like, okay, place your story where you think it goes in this arc. And I don't know that all of them ended up in that spot, but I think the idea was like, if everybody thinks that it goes in the third part, that's going to be an issue. Right. So that kind of gauged the layout a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the big behind-the-scenes things to pick up with these books is that it's a true collaborative effort amongst all the creators. It's, you know, especially during that first kind of building phase, you know, we're really towards the end of it, kind of fixing little things here and there and whatnot, putting the book together. You know, at the beginning of it, everybody's just constant. There was constantly getting notifications about posts and replies and things of that nature. So it's been a large group effort, much like the Oz one was as well.
Yeah. And this book has been going on for a long time. This is not like, hey, over last summer we decided we were going to do this thing. I mean, this has been like over a year and a half or so. That this is probably maybe even more since we started the discussions about it. So there was a lot of planning. Pete, I remember back at the beginning, before you said you wanted cards, I remember talking to Wendy Gale at some point off of the thread, and she's like, oh, cool, I want some cards. I can't wait. Nobody's going to take the cards. And literally, like, the first post in there was you like, hey, I want to do the cards. And I could just feel all the way from Texas. She was like, you son of a bitch.
The great thing is Wendy and I have such a great relationship. The very first thing we did was traded scripts so we could read what each other was doing.
But it was just so neat because I was like, holy crap, right off the bat, here's the first battle, because they both picked cards. Like, the first 2 people I heard from picked cards, and to see the 2 of you guys develop how you were going to do that was super cool, because that was the first way. How can we get 30, 50 different people to get on the same page? So that was like the first example of it in the book.
And like, I'm actually a story which does use another character towards the end. So we had to get that on model from the person doing the other story. And I was really able to make it work so that nothing really interrupts that character's story. It was really funny because I was writing the script. I'm like, I like this ending, but I also like this ending. So I sent Travis both endings, and I told him, you pick. And he picked, weirdly enough, he picked the happier ending. And I used the word happier.
Because it's so interesting, because obviously I think Matt said something where this has been going on for over a year now. And that's something that I think people don't understand. And we really go down deep into the business. This isn't a project where, hey, 6 months ago we decided to do this. This has been going on, and even just the planning and figuring out who should work on what, when you should work on it, how you should work on it, how is it going to fit, putting it together, making sure the art team and the writer works well together. And that's a whole bigger issue, because everybody here knows that, and we'll go mainstream for a second, not to put anybody out on blast in the indie scene, but there have been books in DC and Marvel where the writer and the artist hate each other's guts, and it is a failure, and people leave books. And that's also, you get a change in a writer or an artist because they can't stand each other. And so what has that been like, even just getting to the point where saying, hey, you got the green light to do this? Because that's a whole different ballgame before you even get to the Kickstarter. So I think this Kickstarter is the easy part at this point, and the printing's even easier at that point, because now you guys are, most of the story stuff is done, and it's just the final touches. And that's something that I think people don't understand, is that this is not just a 6 months ago we decided to do on the fly of the whim type of position.
And some of us had to be paired up with people too. I mean, I think the vast majority of folks probably had, the writer-wise, they had an artist and a colorist or what have you there with it. Some of us didn't. I was paired up with someone because I just didn't have an artist at the time.
As was I.
Fortunately, I was tied with Warren, and every time he sent me stuff, it was like great.
Warren does great.
Yeah, he really does. He does a great job, and the little extra details he put into it are fantastic. So I can't speak for the amount of people that had to be paired up with somebody versus not, but I think a lot of us sort of kind of knew this is my first time doing non-reviewing work in this as well, because I did proofreading for Oz, but I didn't do any writing in that one.
That's what's so cool about this book too. I just imagine reading it for the first time as just somebody who's a creator on it is going to find artists and writers that they like, like that they've never even talked to before.
Yeah.
You're a part of the book. So I think that's the fun part of anthologies.
Yeah, I'm actually, because I'm working on an 8-pager with the Baggs brothers who did art and another story in there too. It's like you kind of get through all of that.
I was doing a book with Baggs brothers, and Damon and I, my artist on Dodo, we actually entered another anthology together because we like working together so much on this one.
Nice.
Very cool.
We didn't get into that one, but we're like, you know what? We're still, but we were let's keep working on this something together.
Yeah, and just to give a time frame, like I was late in the game, and I sent a pitch. Of course, this is my first comic book publish thing ever, and I sent him a pitch for Alice, of course, because it's just like I'll take the main character, and that was back in March 7th, 2021, and so that was late in the game, and so that was my first pitch, and it was of course denied. I did bring in
Denied.
I had a few laps around the bar at Kingdom.
Yeah, like maybe, yeah.
I have a question for you, Davey, then. So obviously, if this is your first book published, and I think everybody else, minus me, because I haven't published anything yet, and I'm working on something, but it's going to upset a bunch of people, and let's just say it's Hart Fisher-esque.
Oh, no.
So you see, Phil knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Did he influence you the other night?
Only the Jerry Springer way we go. That's an inside joke. That I don't know if anybody knows who Hart Fisher is beyond.
No.
So, well, you all have homework now, so you're welcome. To 2 hours of an amazing interview is all I'm going to say. And if you're a fan of MCR, about an hour and 10 minutes in, I'll ruin MCR for you. So you're welcome. But anyway, what is that like for you to be a first-time published, I guess, and really have a work published and have a starting point? Because that's kind of must be weird for you, because everybody else, minus me, has had credits, I guess, for lack of better word. I think that's the correct way how to put it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just super weird because I met Travis on a whim. I was playing D&D in Melbourne with my brother, and I would stop by this comic book shop that was down the street from him on Wednesdays. I knew nobody there. I was doing my own comic, trying to pitch in a not literary sense, but more of the traditional, because that's where I come from, more of the traditional publishing. I've been pitching comics there, and I just ran into Travis and Pete up at Kingdom of Comics, and we just started talking about comics, and it's a great shop. I love it. You can get a beer. It's the best place ever.
One of the best out there, man.
Yeah, it really. And, I just started talking with them, and, they talked about the projects they're doing on. They were just finishing up Oz when I got there to talk with those guys, and I bought the book and said, this is amazing, and I would love to be a part of the next one, when I started to hear about the talks. And he's like, yeah, man, just pitch me. And I was like, okay, I will do that. I will definitely give you a story. And of course I pitched Alice, and, it was just a great ride. It's kind of, unbelievable. And to be with that Cthulhu group on Facebook was just awesome to see all the different creators that were chiming in all the time, and just seeing the different faces that are in the independent industry of comics, and seeing that I kind of feel a part of it a little bit, because I hadn't ever. I was kind of just a loner. So it's been a really amazing journey.
One of the things for Davey that is kind of cool that I think that you just kind of touched on is that a lot of people feel like oh, for me to actually get in and feel like I belong, I've got to go write my first full issue. I've got to write a graphic novel that's, this massive tome to get started. And even in my world over here and in Symmetry Creations, Steph Cannon, who's my partner in Sim, when she started, she wrote a 2-page story that got picked up by a publisher in one of their periodicals. And because that made her a writer with that company, she ended up doing panels at WonderCon and San Diego Comic-Con for that publisher off of 2 pages. It doesn't mean she didn't do other things, but that was an amazing way to get her foot in the door. I mean, most people, their goal is to maybe at some point I'm going to be big enough to be able to be where I can be relevant enough to be on panels at San Diego Comic-Con. And literally with a 2-page anthology piece, she was at San Diego multiple years in a row doing panels. So there's a lot of different ways to get into the game, and no one way is right. So if this is your doorway to get in, great. I'm glad you're here.
I would almost say that it would be.
Thank you, Matt.
It would almost be easier for somebody looking to get into comics if they did start with an anthology with a smaller amount of pages, so they aren't overwhelmed, and then work their way up. I mean, yeah, you can go full blown if you want to, but from my experience, I think an anthology is a good way for somebody to get used to the production line, how things work, and not be overwhelmed by the amount of work they're going to have to do.
So to even talk about that further, and I know we're going a little bit into business, but and it's more of the business and even the strategy side of things, but also if you're a first-time creator, I would imagine, or even a brand new creator, and you got a few things published, and you're trying to build your audience, if you go into a book that has legitimately 15, 16 other stories, people are coming for certain people. Like, so for instance, I don't know, and nothing against you, I only know LK and I know Phil. And Matt have spoken briefly on.
I think it would be weird if you knew me.
It'd be,
The idea is that I don't know half the team at minimum on this book, but I know Travis. I know Travis produces a quality work. I know that Phil worked on the book. I know Chuck Pino worked on the book. I know LK worked on the book. And me and Matt, as I was saying, we keep missing each other to get him on a show when he has a Kickstarter relevant, just because life is busy. But the idea is that all of a sudden now, Davey, you're part of that book. Danny, you're part of that book. Pete, you're part of that book. Now, when I pick up that book, I'm going to at least know you, or I have the potential to know you. And so what is that? Because that's also a big deal as well, because audience expansion is complicated right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's very, it's somewhat similar to what we kind of experience with my daughter a lot. We, cons currently, but she kind of got her start with a lot of it doing free sketches for people on free comic book days in a local comic shop, Famous Faces and Funnies. And generally they would put her kind of next to the door into the area where all the artists were. And she would have all of these people next to her. Usually 1 or 2 people over would be Carl Moline, who's also doing artwork in this book. And people come for Carl. I mean, he's big news. So they come for Carl, and they come in the door, and they think that they have to go through a line straight from the door over to Carl. So they keep piling up behind each other and ending up in front of my daughter. They're not looking for her, but the moment they see, she started when she was 12. She's 16 now. But they see a 16-year-old girl sitting there drawing and seeing how well she can do it. I mean, just how talented she is. Suddenly they're there asking her for things. They're following her on Instagram. She's getting, that's how we met Travis originally. He was in line for somebody like Carl, looked over, saw Emily, and was like, "You want to do a pinup for me?"
Wow.
So I think it's very, very similar to that. People are going to pick up this book because they hear Carl's in it. They hear they're a Travis fan or a Matt fan.
Because it goes to the theory that, and obviously my entire show is predicated on the fact that nobody's coming to my show for me. Partially they're coming because I'm asking questions and I guess position my show and build out my show a certain way, but they're coming for my guest. And there was a reason when I went to podcast game 10 years ago, I said, look, what do I want to do? Do I want to go curation, or where people are going to come for my thoughts, or do I want to interview people and people are coming for the guest? And they come to hear how I'm going to ask the guest a question. Like, I guarantee you, nobody watched my Hart Fisher interview because of me. They watched it because it was hard, and I asked interesting questions. And it was a very fascinating conversation. I think people are going to be very pleasantly surprised with that thing. But that's how I thought about it, and then that naturally grows my audience. And so I just find this to be fascinating because I guarantee when I enter the comic game, I'm going to be stealing somebody off of this book, no question about it. And I'm sorry, whoever I steal it from. This is a public apology, starting on the art side. That I'm sorry, but I will pay you better than who I steal you from. I can guarantee you that. And you can quote me on that one. So I just find it super interesting in that regard. And I think it's cool. And also I think it's very interesting because everybody's story carries everybody else's story at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel a lot like you, Andrew, at this point, like the interviewer, the sort of sideline, not like sideline, but just background. Like, I just hope that the conversation's good, right? And that, there's something that I can show on the page with the writing and my artist, and he's bringing his great work and everything like that. And just hopefully that grabs some attention, and it parallels with the people that I'm having this conversation with in the book, right? So I just hope, like, in general, the whole conversation's good around the book and people enjoy the book. And I'm just glad I'm included in it. And maybe somebody will take recognition, but it is the first publication, so like it is the starting point, right? So it's just good to be here, and glad that I'm part of that conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah, because I think that's very important. Sometimes you just need to get your foot in the door with something, and then obviously it spins out into other things, and you never know. Also, I'm a strong believer, and I don't know how anybody else feels, that I like to find new talent. And, sometimes I have to shoot 100 shots with 100 different people to find the next superstar and find the next breakout artist or the next breakout writer. And you have to go through that, and you never know who's going to be a superstar next. And also everybody needs a starting point. And that's something as well. And, it's obviously very important that you get into something and then, that's your launching point, and then you build forward. And it's so interesting. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of that. So I like to give indie, and I purposely came into indie when I launched this show because I'm like, well, look, I want to find the next superstar. And that's something that I'm trying to figure out. Phil, just so you know, you're already a superstar, so you don't need to.
Oh, jeez.
I will tell you, Andrew, one of the things that I think is neat too, which again goes into the business and the next level for us creators, is like there's a community amongst the creators, even within the creative team. You get to see, hey, these people are cool. I wonder what Pete's doing, or I wonder what LK's doing. Yeah. And like, you guys, we end up supporting each other's campaigns. Steph and I today, literally like an hour before we got on this call, we've been doing the thank you page in Heirs of Isildur, the Perilous Prospects book 1, and Pete's name is in there, LK's name is in there. Phil's back some campaigns that we've done before. And we do the same thing. I know that we backed an LK campaign before. It's cool to be able to see each other support outside of the book too, because all of us do something more than just the anthology. The anthology is where all this creative talent we have comes together, and then we all hope that at some point that somebody's going to take some sight of the other work that we're doing, or like in Pete's case, take some sight of the work that Emily's doing as well. So you can expand. This is the starting point in that respect, and kind of expand out to the other works.
Yeah.
Because also it's marketing as well in a lot of ways, where it's the idea that, Matt, you bring in your fans into this book, but when you bring in your fans, and this is one of the things about anthologies, is that and Phil knows this conversation, is because we have this conversation on a bunch of other shows where Kickstarter, there is a finite amount of money that everybody has in Kickstarter, whether you want to admit it or not. I only have X amount of money for comic books every single month. And so if there's 15 good projects, I maybe can back 3. And so when there's a bunch of talent in a project, you're eliminating competition. I think there's 30 to 40, maybe even 50 creators on this, if not more. And so now those 50 people are not competing with each other on 50 different Kickstarter campaigns. And so when you market, so when Matt markets, it doesn't affect Pete for Cthulhu. And then when he markets, it also doesn't affect Daniel. It doesn't affect Phil. It doesn't affect you, LK. And so what is that like? Because you're eliminating competition, and you're also boosting everybody else up when you're marketing. And you also have 50 marketing arms essentially, because if all of you send out the same tweet, it's 50 tweets. It's not just one tweet anymore. And so what is that like? Because it does expand the audience massively. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand when you're actually pushing out Kickstarter. I mean, what are there, 350, 400 projects in comics right now? And there's a lot of good projects out there, no question about it. So what is that like for each and every one of you, that everybody, the 6 of you, are not competing against each other in this campaign at very least?
I will say this, I don't ever feel like I'm ever competing against somebody else. I don't ever feel like if LK and I had a campaign happening at the same time, I wouldn't be like, oh crap, I got to go push her into the dirt. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, dude, hopefully we can do something cool together. John Westhoff just did Drumsticks of Doom, and partway through the campaign, you know, we had an obvious way that we could do some cross marketing. And I'm like, cool, if we got some more backers from him and he got some more backers from us, then that's great. A rising tide raises all ships.
I was just going to
I always want to see everybody that's out there succeed at the same time. So I never really feel like I'm in competition. I totally get what you're saying about the money part of it. But when people are out there, I'm like, hey, we can find a way. There's going to be somebody that's a fan of ours, that's a supporter of ours, that is going to have some disposable income that they didn't spend on us, that they can go spend on somebody else that's out there. And hopefully the same thing happens on somebody else. I agree
to definitely a point where I don't think it's competition to the same degree that I got to go eliminate you and then I'm Apple and I got to take out Samsung. I don't think it's that level of competition, but you know, you got to earn people's dollars. And you know, one of the things about Kickstarter, at least I view it, maybe I have a different interpretation. I'm the first person to say it, is I view Kickstarter as, you know, I guess a treat. I don't view it as a necessity, where it comes down where it's more of a novelty at this point for me. And I love comics and I love backing Kickstarters, and I think some of the best projects in comics are right now on Kickstarter. I think there's a bunch of good projects on Indiegogo as well. I think crowdfunding has brought in innovation. But also there gets a point where I'm like, oh, fuck, there's like 5 great projects and I'm only back 3. What do I do? And I don't want to shove somebody down in the dark. And I share out projects that I can't back. I think everybody does. But where I'm going is that you guys have 50 marketing options, and it's brilliant. And that's why I think anthologies are super smart, because you're eliminating and you're basically forcing a collaboration. And now if you send out a tweet, that tweet helps every other creator in there. And it's so good. And obviously, that's something that I think is helpful for Davey in particular, who's a first-time creator. I mean, that's like a God's gift sent to you in a lot of ways.
I hope so.
I'm in like the weird position because I'm running my own Kickstarter at the same time this is happening. So I'm competing, quote unquote, against myself. But I've also been promoting this book. I've been promoting other Kickstarters I've been backing. I've been doing crossover promotions with people, because people, while you're running Kickstarter, if you're running Kickstarter at the same time, will say, oh, do you want to cross promote? You say sure, and you tend to have that cross pollination between your fan groups and your backers. So that also helps. Yeah. So the rising tide raises all ships kind of thing.
No, I mean, I get it. And I think that obviously, you know, yeah, I'll use Keanu Reeves. I think it was an overall good for Kickstarter, but I also think that it was only an overall good for Kickstarter if you knew how to use it. And I think that that's the other thing too that's an issue right now, because if you're, and I'll give you, Daniel, as an example, I think you know how to use your Kickstarter and this Kickstarter at the same time in conjunction with each other. But if you don't know how to use it in conjunction, it's not going to help you one way or the other. But that's not an issue of a rising tide. That's an issue of saying, how do I utilize what's going on? Because if I see you're working on a project and I'm like, hey, who's Daniel? And then I start Googling you on Kickstarter, or I hear you on a show, and we can talk about your Kickstarter in a second, because it actually was super cool. Night Raft #1, you know, it was dope in a lot of ways, and I actually need to look at it completely and then check it out, because I'm actually super interested now. But that's something that I think I agree that the rising tide does raise all ships if you know how to utilize it.
Yeah.
So this is what is Night Raft for those who don't know about it. Since we're on the topic, and I like the 90s, because I'm in the 90s.
I touched it a little bit on it at the start of the show. It's a 90s influenced dark anti-hero book. A guy of zero confidence named Joe Sutton is kidnapped by a bunch of basically high-tech mercenaries, experimented on, and turned this hulking anti-hero creature called Night Wrath. And there's this really interesting because Night Wrath is very brash, he's very bold, but there's still that little inkling of him where it's like very unconfident. You really see this in the preview pages I posted in the Kickstarter. But it's also more maybe to this new form, which he goes back forwards from. Then you see, and his Night Wrath form, I say, it's a combination of like Venom and Hulk, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm a 90s baby, so it's all like 90s. Oh, man, like the 90s were great.
I believe one person described it. It's everything that's good about 90s comics done right. That's one person said on Twitter. I'm like, yes, someone got it.
No, I definitely need to look at this because I love the 90s, and I missed like all the good stuff in the 90s. I was born in 93, everybody. I was like 7 when 2000 hit, and like everybody talks about, oh man, the 90s were great. Like the Spice Girls were around, Backstreet Boy was like hitting, and Sprint was coming, and all the good
I'm not
stuff.
sure if that's the examples that I would use for 90s culture, right? But, you know,
Do you realize that me and Phil are on the stream and there's some metalhead action going on?
I was
I
gonna
don't think
say,
either one of
yeah.
us is like, yay, Spice Girl.
yeah.
See,
They ruined
I'm more
MTV,
89,
man.
I'm more of a classical music person, so even I'm like, I do
You're
know
all
Christmas Puff Pies,
jealous.
though. I do know Christmas Puff Pies.
But like, you know, start like looking for some Pantera or something at least. You know?
There you go.
It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. This is a safe zone. You can admit
Here,
that it's all right.
see, here I was listening to 96 Degrees and Korn, not at the same time, but like the same time period.
Well,
Well,
at the same time,
at the same time, though, I'm just saying.
Same mixtape. Yeah.
This is a stream about a mashup, so we got to get a mashup there for them.
I know.
With
I know.
the Judgment
you're
Night
all-
soundtrack.
It's all right, guys. It's all right. I'm accepting of all people here. It's all right. You don't have to be ashamed for your love.
Streets back. All right.
It's all
like-
right.
I was born in 89, so I know how the 90s were great, but at the same time, it's like, there's some stuff that could have gone better.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I'll write the real sequel to this book. Cthulhu Invades, the 90s music scene, and we'll be really good.
Cthulhu Invades boy bands.
And it's literally the voice of Cthulhu with Mbop.
Phil, if I write that book, would you do the voiceover for it?
Oh, I'll voice over anything, man.
We should just totally write that script right now. Cthulhu's just so sick of all the boy bands, and he's decided that he wants to redo it. And
No,
so,
I think he's a big fan.
Second
He's a big
section where the
fan.
new kids on the block come in. And,
it'll be an instant hit, But we could keep Baby Spice. We could keep Baby Spice. That's all I'm gonna say. You all know it's true. You know it's true. I'm just saying. Again, it's all right. I'm here for everybody. But let's get back to Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. I got to show all this stuff because actually I do like this art. So that's LK's book, and it's all about jam. And what was this like? Because obviously this is something that is very cool artistically, and it's definitely got a new school vibe to it. And so what was that like, really writing this story and having that new school vibe to it and that fun, sort of Wonderland madness a little bit?
So, we were talking about picking characters earlier, and I knew I wanted the White Queen, and I was like, oh, she's known enough, but like not, I didn't think anybody would like her. So there was one other person who went for White Queen, so it was luckily I did hear later that the pitches were still really, it was close close call. So but luckily there wasn't like 10 people trying to write the same character. And there's this, it was like 86 or something movie, Alice in Wonderland movie with Carol Channing, where she sings Jam Tomorrow, Jam Yesterday, which I actually don't know if that's the title or if that's just some of the lyrics. I can't remember which it is, but I love that song. And it is like a very political statement. It's like talking about how politicians will promise one thing but never deliver. And so in this one, there's this Cthulhuan creature coming at her, and she's like, you know what? This time I'm going to deliver, and it's time for jam today.
I completely forgot that was Carol Channing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
I
guys.
love that song. It's
I
great.
was going to tell you this, guys, yesterday. There actually was a off-Broadway musical. You know that song that my parents saw before I was born called "Never Jam Today." The only good thing that came out was then Dick Penn as a new character. That was great solely for the musical.
Oh, they created a new character for the musical.
Yeah, called Persona non grata. And apparently she was the only thing that really, her career was the only thing that survived from that musical. Apparently it was terrible. I can't find anything about it anywhere. Just that it did not last very long.
Disappeared down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and there was actually another Wonderland musical, I think in the late 2010s. But like guy who did Jekyll and Hyde and Scarlet Pimpernel, that also didn't last very long.
So to even talk about that, because obviously there's been a lot of Alice in Wonderland movies. There's been a bunch of spin-offs and a bunch of other stuff. So how much of that sort of influences what you guys want to write about? Because obviously the White Queen, I think, and maybe I'm wrong here, but the White Queen I know is Anne Hathaway in 2010, 2016, and I just instantly associate. And the only other reference I refer to as the White Queen is when they're referring to Resident Evil and how the hive is set up. And so obviously there's a lot of things that reference Alice in Wonderland, and there's a lot of interpretations. And so when you're writing all this stuff, because a lot of this stuff has been referenced in movies, been referenced in music, has been referenced in other literature, so has been referenced in other graphic novels. I mean, Lost Girls by Alan Moore has a very, very interesting interpretation of Alice. And so how does that influence what you're writing and even your interpretations of Wonderland? Because it's been skewered and interpreted, reinterpreted, reshot out, reimagined, and a variety of other stuff. I mean, Sucker Punch has a whole interpretation of Alice in Wonderland. And so, like, how does that influence everybody's writing style? Because you got the traditional, by Lewis C. Carroll, but then you got everything up to this point in this graphic novel, and then you have a whole Cthulhu society, for lack of a better word, as well.
That's what I was
in the case of the dodo, it's mainly from the book, with maybe a little bit of a soup cone of how he is in the 1950s animated version, which I think is the only real version which has the dodo in it, to my knowledge. But made more like an Oxford Don, like Lewis Carroll was, like this kind of pompous professorial type.
Yeah, Dodo was in the '85 miniseries too. I remember that. Now I was just gonna say, like, there were a lot of discussions at the beginning of it too, to make sure to double check and make sure that something wasn't an invention, especially of like the animated movie from Disney, because everybody kind of goes back to that. It's kind of like with Oz, you had the same basic problem. There were things that were specific to the movie. You can't have ruby red slippers. They have to be silver because they were silver in the book. They were only red in the movies because Technicolor and trying to show it off. But that's still effectively copyrighted. So there was talk, especially at the beginning of that, just to kind of remember to go to the source material for things and not just sit there and look at the kind of popular Disney movie and go from there.
Yes, the two versions I grew up with was the 50-something animated version and the 97. Was it a miniseries or extra long?
There was just you're talking about the one that had like Whoopi Goldberg is the
Whoopi Goldberg is the Cheshire Cat.
Yeah, that was just it was like a really long kind of made for TV movie. The miniseries one was like, I think, 85 and 87. They actually did one for Alice in Wonderland and another one for Through the Looking Glass.
I remember the biggest thing they said right off the bat, the biggest example was, if you're going to have the Hatter, it had to look like the public domain Hatter. It couldn't be Jim Carrey's Hatter. And that was the example that was given right off the bat to say, hey, look, you have to go back to the stuff that's public domain. Don't look at popular culture, because you could be putting the book in some jeopardy if you're taking copyrighted or trademarked versions of these characters. So when it came to us, we're like, hey, nobody knows who the Knave is, so it's not like we're gonna have to worry about it.
I'll have you know, he gets a mention in my story, and I had no idea anybody else was doing anything on that.
That makes me happy to know.
I was saying, I'm guessing that would also go with Lovecraftian lore and everything, because that has influenced so many movies. So many movies you've seen out there draw a lot from Lovecraft. Mountains of Madness and Color Out of Space, Reanimator, all kinds of things that came from Lovecraft too. But I guess you don't have to be quite as careful in that area, I would say, as a writer, maybe. Would you guys say?
It's a little bit. One of the things, it's probably a bit more in the art. There are some things that are considered part of the Cthulhu mythos that are copyrighted. They're not from Lovecraft to begin with. Lovecraft had this wonderful way of not describing things.
Right.
And so it's been left to everybody's interpretations. And, so you've grown up looking at it all, and you have no idea sometimes that, your idea of what this looks like actually comes from, some stoned out guy in the 70s painting on velvet, like it just was never described that way. And sometimes it was somebody, at a place like Disney that just, they add it, they put it, that particular image happens to be copyrighted. So you have to be a little careful there too. Especially with certain characters. There's a lot of resources online for that, fortunately, especially with the Lovecraftian stuff, so that you can look things up and know for sure. I think all the major players that everybody's got are pretty well.
Because Lovecraft, like his stories are definitely public domain, but the problem is certain artistic depictions
Right.
are not. That's the thing. Like you can use Herbert West Reanimator, but you can't use the movie version. You can use the version from the book from like the 1930s.
Right. Yeah, you can use Winnie the Pooh as long as you use the book version of Winnie the Pooh and not Disney's version of Winnie the Pooh.
Just can't put a red.
Can't put a red shirt on them and you're fine.
It's just so interesting because obviously when we really get into this stuff, because I guess really what this goes down to is that it's trust to not cross that copyright or that trademark line in a lot of ways. And I don't think people even understand that. Readers are picking this up and they may or may not be interested in this, but it's the idea that there is a fine line. And when you get picked up or you pitched and Jarvis like, yeah, go for it. You have to know where that line is and what you can push and what you can't push. And obviously, if you're the artist, it's a little bit different because the writer hands it to you and then you're drawing what the writer told you, but you also have to understand as an artist saying, look, I can't draw, just use Disney. I can't draw Winnie the Pooh with a shirt on and a red shirt. And maybe I can't even draw him with a blue shirt because I'm poking the bear a little too much. No pun intended.
Poking a mouse a little too much.
Poking the mouse a little too much.
But the idea is that that's something so what is that like? Because that's a lot of trust in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That Travis is giving you.
And there's a little bit of that too, but things are being vetted to be sure too. There was a lot of that, especially with Oz, because Oz was a good one where a lot of people really know the movie. Not a lot of people really know the books. So there was a very careful check for a lot of things with that. And there's been the same thing here where, just kind of double checking, making sure nobody's doing anything that they don't realize that they're doing.
I find this fascinating. Again, I don't envy that position. It's I'm probably going to wind up running into this problem when I write something. So I'm going to have fun writing something. Oh man.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Heads up, always make sure you have a story no one sometimes you're on the same wavelength as another writer, and sometimes you get to that idea before you. So you're like, this happened to me today because I was working on and setting it up on the shelf, kind of like a great movie monster or like the public domain version of the movie monster. So Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, Mummy, things like that. But like public domain, my twist on things. So it's not like going to be like Bela Lugosi's, not Boris Karloff, obviously, because those are copyright universal. But I decided to call my Frankenstein monster Adam because he says in the classic novel, "Am I not thy Adam?" And then today I get a message from James Tinian's Substack, and the bastard beat me to it.
It's kind of crazy. So I hate when that happens.
Yeah, so I'm like, should I ever do this book? Should I just press on ahead? And part of me is like, yeah. It's like at this point, try to use it by other people. I'm just unfortunate that James Tinian, a guy of infinitely more money than I did and more power and let's say more talent, got there first. Even though I had this script written during the pandemic, the first 2 issues. So I'm like,
You should do it anyway.
Yeah, I should do it anyway.
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Sue me? He should sue Mary Shirley first.
So I got a question for Phil, actually, because Phil, you're doing a lot of coloring on your story, from my understanding, right?
Yeah.
So what is that like for you? Because obviously we know that LK is doing writing. I think Matt, you're doing writing, right? And Daniel's writing Pete, are you doing art or are you writing?
I do writing. My daughter does art and another one, so we kind of kept in the family on both sides.
You're a writer, right?
Same, yep.
So I was hoping Martha and Don were going to be in here because they're more the art side, and unfortunately they're not. And no worries, it's all good. But
You got a bunch of narcissistic writers on the line, so it's good.
hey, look, I know I don't have an ego. I just want to get paid. Actually, I am.
Who let Davey on this live chat again?
I don't know.
Who let him in this group? What are we talking about?
Again, like so many things, we're simply going to have to blame Travis.
Yeah.
Oh, I guarantee you, Travis is never going to come on my show after this interview. So it's all right, though. It's all right. I'll take the L. All jokes aside, though, I'll take the L. It's all right. You know, because I'll just have to go on his. It'll be an even exchange. And he will try to take my title away from me, the professional comic writer title. 75 panel defenses in a week, guys. 75. But getting back to my question for Phil, what is that like for you? Because you see this differently. Because unlike you're not doing the art and doing the pencils and the inking, if that's even a thing anymore, but you're coloring your story. And so how do you see this thing being developed? Because you get it sort of after the script's been approved, the art's laid down, and then you have to say, okay, I got to color it, because that must be a different experience than writing it.
Well, you've got to set the mood for what it is. It's a little bit different on this story because it was kind of done the Marvel method way, where it had a basic plot overall for the pages. And then Kurt Belcher did all the line work, both the pencils and the inks. And then and then I went in with colors, and what I was basically doing is because it had to do with the flowers and the flower garden and then the Cthulhu mystics, I was trying to do a blend where it's both colorful and bright, especially at first, and darker as you bring the Cthulhu mystics into the mix. And then also there was I think there was 5 different writers that actually collaborated to work out the rest of the story after we did all that.
Yeah, that's what Travis refers to them as the B stories, because it's what they were the B's in the Cthulhu Invades Oz. So we still just call them B stories no matter what. I don't know if there's B's in the artwork or not this time around, but so it was a way for Travis to really try to include some more people that we couldn't get into the book to begin with. We kind of give them some pre-rendered pages, and then they have to write a story to fit.
Because the reason why I asked this question is that obviously when you're writing it, you're creating something out of nothing. Then your artist is interpreting it. That's how I'm viewing it. And correct me if I'm wrong here, because I haven't done a comic yet. The artist is then putting that idea into picture format, and then finally what's bringing some of that out, because it's not a black and white book, is the colorist, and they're sort of stuck with the script and the line work and the inks, and obviously that's a very different interpretation, and you're seeing the story being developed from a third round versus a first round or a second round, and so that must be different. I think it's just fascinating. So what was that like even for you, Phil, that, hey, I now have to figure out what both the writer and the artist wanted and deliver on what they're trying to achieve? That's what a colorist's job is in a lot of ways. And I've spoken to Sandru and a variety of other people who are colorists, and it is a tricky job. Claudia Snow talks about this a lot.
You're basically using color and color theories to represent different moods, different feels, different atmosphere for whatever. Generally you'd be going off the script too, the same as everybody else. And, if they're saying it's a dark, cloudy night, you're not going to do the sky blue, and you're just affecting the mood through the color work, You're not going to use super bright colors in a dark story. You're going to use more muted and darker colors, stuff like that,
because I find it fascinating. I don't understand color theory, so I'm the first person to say I don't understand color theory. But my shirt is color theory approved. So Hey, there are 3 eyes looking at everybody right now. So just because I have 3 eyes.
What? No blue shirt today, Andy?
No blue shirt. No
Yes,
blue shirt.
today, man.
Yeah, no blue shirt, guys. No blue shirts. And then everybody else is looking at me and you with like 15 eyes. What the fuck are they talking about? You're just not in the club. That's what it comes down to. And the millions who are going to listen to this on podcasts are going to be like, what the fuck are they talking about? So you laugh now. Wait till this thing does 1 million views and you'll be like, oh shit, he was right. I didn't say they were going to be legitimate views.
Yeah.
There's at least I think there's 2 people in chat that know what we're talking about.
Oh, I mean, I knew this show was going downhill after Tuesday, Phil. You and me both knew this show was going to go downhill after Tuesday.
Nah.
You're doing fine.
You're getting back to Cthulhu, and I actually do want to talk about the rewards because I actually want to sell this book for Travis, and I want to help you guys get funded. Obviously, there's a lot of rewards going on. There's the digital with the audio commentary, the digital Oz and Wonderland, the audio for both with the digital. There's the standard cover, which I think is this right here, which is super cool. Then there's this one, which I think is the orange cone, I want to say.
The hardcover.
That's the hardcover.
Yeah, that's the hardcover. My bad.
Yeah.
I've been confused, guys.
That's okay. That's the one that Kyle Willis did that. And if you look really, really closely, you can see all the words behind it. That's actually a physical painting that he did, and he painted on top of pages from Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, that's cool.
That's dope. That's actually super dope. I kind of want to buy that. I kind of want to upgrade my pledge now.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. It's just like the hardcover that he did for Oz in that fashion. He did the same thing with that. It's absolutely fantastic. So there's the 3 covers. You had the standard edition, you had the hardcover. There's the orange cone exclusive is that one right there. Yeah. So it has no trade that dress. I'm trying to remember what we were calling it the other day. It was the
Well, it's definitely a virgin cover.
yeah, it's a virgin cover. We call it like the Pictionary cover. Yeah, the Pictionary cover. So we call it because you can kind of pick out exactly what it means just by looking at the pictures on it.
Means they're having a tea party, aren't they?
There's a lot of tea parties on the book. I'm sure of that.
And then there's a bunch of other things. There's obviously the boxes, which have a bunch of books in them and have other things in them and a variety of other stuff. So, and then I think there's a tier where it's signed by 5 creators. I don't know who those 5 creators are going to be.
It'll be whoever shows up that day. I can almost guarantee you I'll be one of them because we will be meeting up and signing them at a comic shop that is literally down the street from my house. So you'll get me, you'll get my daughter Emily, you'll get Travis for sure, probably Heather. Maybe we can convince Matt to come down.
Maybe you might. Maybe if I don't have some other craziness going on, that is when it's coming out.
Yeah, and just it'll be whoever shows up. So it's like guaranteed 5, but if you've got more than 5, you're getting more than 5.
Well, I'll tell you, last year when Oz came out, didn't we have like 19 of the Oz creators?
Yeah, we had a ton. Yeah, we had a ton with that, and then a few like a month or so later, I think, when we all showed up at the Collective.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. At the
Collective,
Collective, we had like 19 people at the Collective.
Yeah, it was pretty astounding.
I like to fly out for it. It depends on money and hotel.
Right. Yeah, for sure. One of the other things you can do while backing this is also get a copy of Cthulhu Invades Oz as part of one of the things too, so that you can, if you haven't purchased it, you can pick up both books from this Kickstarter as well, and both digital and physical.
There's a lot of stuff that can be picked up. You get all 3 covers. You get the collector's box standard and the deluxe, which has a bunch of different books in it. I think it's got like 5 soft covers, a hardcover. It's got like a hollow foil thing in there. There's the Oz one. There's the Wonderland one. Lots of add-ons. There's the book that's the Cthulhu 24 page, which I can tell you how much it goes for eBay because I sold one. It's a $20 book on eBay minimum. So, it's an expensive book, and I think that's what it's being added on for. So, that's the price, and it's probably going to sell for more as things move forward. And I know exactly why. 'Cause I sold one, guys. There's some other things. I think there's also, and I'm not too sure where the Substack thing fits into all of this either, unless that is the Virgin. Because I
No,
think
that's a separate cover. There's a fourth secret subset cover that you have to add on for, but I forgot how you do it.
Yeah, so there's that, and then anything you want pretty much from Orange Cone you can get. In which that if you want food donations, I'm sure there's a way that you can get that. I'm sure there's a way to get Broke Down and For Dead Bodies and a variety of other things. There's a way how to get all of this, either by backing, or I'm sure that if it's not on the Kickstarter, Travis will direct you someplace that you can pick it up. In that realm, I think Goods as well is up there, I think, in a lot of ways.
And there's a indie comic bundle for all the backers, being that it's digital. You have to get one of my books in there, so just saying.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, there's a ton of unlocks that have happened already from the amount of people that are there. So when you get in and you back this, there are quite a few digital comics that you'll just get for backing it.
Yeah, I think there's now about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books already unlocked.
Yeah,
and then also, I know that there's the thing with Russell's book right now, with the bookmark. If you back both, you get that bookmark. And I don't know who's going to fulfill the bookmark, but that's not on the backer. But that's something that, obviously, if you're really into Cthulhu and you back both books, or you're hemming and hawing, well, if you back both books, you're going to get that bookmark.
Yeah, and both those books do contain some of the same creators. I think, LK, you're in Hard to Spell. My daughter Emily is, as well as Heather Gibb is in both books. So you even get works from some of the same creators, and you get a great double-sided bookmark.
And so that's something to keep in mind with everything. And obviously, it's just an awesome book, guys. Like, it looks good. I was really thrilled with Cthulhu Invades Oz, and I'm an Oz fan. And obviously, I have no doubt that Wonderland is going to be just as good, if not better, in that realm. And and look, I'm not a Cthulhu guy, so I don't back this.
You will stare into the abyss, man.
What'd you say, Phil, to me?
I said you will be after you read it. You will stare into the abyss too, man.
I don't know. It didn't convince me to become a Cthulhu fan. The Oz book, I was like, hey, this is a fun Oz story. Like that's how I view this, and that's something that I think, obviously if you're a Cthulhu fan, it's perfect for you. But if you're like me, and I love The Wizard of Oz, and I love that world, and I love Wonderland, and I love Neverland, which we all know is the next thing. Whether Travis wants to admit it or not, we know Cthulhu's not going to be happy with Wonderland. Neverland's coming. I just know it. Whether I can say that or not, and whether you guys can nod and confirm or not, is up to you. Yeah. Hey, I understand. This is called politics, guys. But I'm going to say what I'm going to say.
I'll speak for Travis at the moment. As of this moment in time, submissions are not being taken for Cthulhu Invades Neverland. So please stop sending him submissions.
I swear to God, it was one time. And I worked hard on that Lego picture. You know how hard it is to draw a comic in Legos? Like, seriously.
Don't be hating on the Legos, man. Don't be hating on the Legos, man.
The paper cuts I got were horrendous. I bleed for my artwork, guys. The middle of the night, you're trying to stay again, and there's Legos on the floor, and then you stub your toe. I mean, I have suffered for this.
One thing I will say is if somebody's watching or listening and isn't sold yet, you can actually go to the Kickstarter page, scroll a little past a third of the way down, and you can click on a link and you get 24 pages out of the book in a PDF for free. You can read right now. You can just go take a look at it, see some of the stuff that's in there, see what some of the stories are like, and make a decision based off of that too.
Yeah, that's something that I think is very important. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with this, and I do want to start wrapping up because I got a bunch of people in here, and I don't want to keep you guys all night long. And obviously, I appreciate everybody showing up. And I appreciate you showing up, obviously, for Travis. I actually backed this book on day one, so I'm looking forward to my metal card because I love metal cards. I've produced my own metal cards, everybody. So, yeah. And I'm going to make a bank on this shit. So, I mean, no. This is $400 worth of metal cards right here.
Wow.
And I'm going to sell all of these in 18 months or less. I know exactly where to sell them.
How many cards do you have there? Is that a stack of 40, stack of 50?
It's like 42, I think, in here.
Cool.
Oh, my business partner has 60, and he's up in Wizard World Philly on April 8th. The 10th, selling his 60. And he's a cosplayer. That's who's on the cut list. So, but it's limited to 121. And then my other metal card is Big Titted Psycho Killer. So that one looks dope as shit. And that's a $15 metal card, and that's limited to 50. And I'm going to make bank on that. But I do want to give everybody a chance to promote themselves beyond Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. So I don't know who wants to go first, but Phil has to go last.
I'll go first. I probably have the shortest list. It's Cthulhu Invades Wonderland. My story with the Red Queen.
Let me. So what is that story again? I don't know what this book is.
It's Cthulhu Invades Wonderland by Orange Cone Productions. I have the story.
Where can people find you though? Like on Twitter, Facebook pages, things like that.
I'm mostly just active on Instagram, probably social media wise at Dave_Scribs.
Go follow him. Needs the support. I don't know who wants to go next, but Phil, you have to go last.
I say LK gets to go.
All right. So you can find me at headlessgnomes.com or at headlessgnomes on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but I'm most active on Facebook when I have a moment in between after my job and business. When I have time to post on the social. You can also get a copy of Fangs and Foul Play issue 0 by going to fangsandfoulplay.com.
So go follow her too, guys. It's one to watch. Daniel, what about you?
You can follow me at Daniel Calvin on Facebook, at the American Dreams Comics Facebook page for American Dreams, also the Alice Studios Comics Facebook page. Also, Alice Studios Comics.square.com, I think, to get digital copies of American Dreams 1 through 5. You can find me on Twitter at Daniel Calvin, and you can find me on Instagram at DCalvin.
What about you, Matt?
So we just finished up our Kickstarter for Heirs of Isildur, The Perilous Prospects, Book 1. We're getting that stuff all squared away right now. As we talked about earlier, it's coming out super, super, super awesome. If you missed the Kickstarter campaign and you want to see if you can get your hands on some of the super awesomeness from it, you can go to insymmetrycreations.com. That's INSYMMETRY creations.com. You can go to /InSym on Facebook. You can go to InSym Creations on Twitter or InSymmetry Creations on Instagram. You can go to heirsofisildur.bandcamp.com, and you can go hear both of the metal albums that we have for it. If you are really wanting to explore and see some other cool stuff, you can go to our page and go to Steph's tab. She does a lot of movie reviews for Shudder, and she's done some reviews of movies she's done some articles for Fangoria. She did a couple other things. She's done some really good articles that are up there. And if you really want to dig deeper, go to the U.S. Soccer website and go look up the Villages SC versus Orlando Wolves U.S. Open Cup game the other night. I am an in-stadium PA announcer, and there's actually a soccer game on the U.S. Soccer website where you can hear me in the stadium losing my crap every time my team, who won 6-0, scores a goal. I'm actually on the U.S. Soccer website now, which is pretty dang cool.
Are you kidding? That's amazing.
So how is your team doing in March Madness?
What's that?
How's your team doing in March Madness?
Well, let me tell you this. My team had their worst season ever in human history, and so it was horrible. But yeah, Gonzaga, I picked them to be the national champs, and they definitely decided, they say, screw you guys, we're out of here. We want to go back. Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, so we don't want to be playing basketball anymore, so they're done.
What about you, Pete? What do you got to promote?
So promotion-wise, take a look around for Jonathan Hedrick's Quicksand. I do some editing on that. It's an absolutely fantastic series. Kind of like Aliens meets Tremors meets Stargate, kind of a vibe to it. It's really, really good. Coming soon, I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be finished. We're in the production phase for it now. Will be Freak Show Herald, which is another thing I'm working on with Jonathan Hedrick. But I actually wrote this in this particular instance. I'm not sure quite yet how we're publishing it. So coming soon, you can follow me at Priesett, Priesett, on Twitter. Or much more importantly, head over to Instagram and follow at Emily R. Inks, all in word. That's my daughter. She does artwork on this. She did artwork on Oz. She's absolutely fantastic. I believe eventually she's going to be doing some work from that, maybe a little variant
Let's
cover
hope
there.
so, man. Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
And she's just absolutely fantastic and just beginning. And she's 16 years old. Way more important than me.
I second everything Pete just said about his daughter. She's a really good artist, and she's up and comer for sure.
And then finally, I want to give the Electric Crayon a chance to promote himself because, well, he's electric.
I do color work mainly, sequentials, covers, stickers, cards, and I also do editorial, pre-press work. You can find me at Facebook most easily at Philion. You can find me at most other social media at PhilmanX or Philion. And if you, like I said, just put out a White Devil from over at Silverline, which you could either probably should be able to pick up a copy on either Indie Planet or Rolland if you're down in that area where some of these guys are when he's out at the many various shows. And looking forward to coming up Kaiju Mania that Alan Johnson's put together with it's an anthology with big kaiju monsters, and that'll be coming around the bend in about a month and a half.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep saying it. I've been saying it almost 300 plus episodes as a Hard Fisher, sort of. You got to support indie. What that means is you have to back Kickstarters. And when Kickstarters are active, you got to throw in, whether it's $1, $5, $100, $300, or whatever you could throw in, because that's how these books get made. And Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, even though it has an amazing team and awesome comic writers from all over the place, Marvel, DC, Scout, Behemoth, and a variety of other places, they need your money to make the book happen and get the book printed and really get it out and let people know and tell these amazing stories. And so you actually have to back it if you want it to come to fruition. Furthermore, there's 6 amazing indie comic creators, 5 amazing indie comic creators, and one who's going to be amazing. Soon enough, I should say. And it's just starting his career, and you have to support all of them as well. And so obviously following them on Instagram, social media goes a long fucking way. And back in their project, Daniel's got a Kickstarter that's going on right now, and you should definitely check it out. It's Night Raft #1. Google it. I'll be putting the link in the description as well for his Kickstarter. And anybody else has a Kickstarter, just DM me and I'll add it into the link as well into the description after the fact. And as far as I'm concerned, obviously, I appreciate likes, shares, all that stuff. Use my sponsorships, make some DCW supplies. Andrew Davis for Mixum, Pop Anime Comics for DCW supplies, 10% off. Also, I got this sick metal card, and I have a Big Titted Psycho Killer metal card that I do not want to show. That is dope as fuck, limited to 50. I got my T-shirt, which is this bad boy. As soon as I pull it up, it's somewhere up here that you can buy on Redbubble. Yes, I built that T-shirt, And what I mean by building it is I hired somebody from Bangladesh to do it because I'm lazy. And you can buy me a coffee, and I will be very honest. I'm going to take that money that you send me and invest in the stock market. No questions asked. So I am all about making money, and that's what's going to happen. No, really, I'm actually going to put it right back into the business because I want you to do this. So I appreciate all that. And on that note, I don't know who should get the final word. Who wants it? Like,
I think we should give it to LK because the rest of us talked a lot while she sat there very politely while we all went jibber, 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 jabber.
yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay, final word.
All right, go back. Cthulhu Invades Wonderland and Cthulhu is hard to spell because I have like 100 bookmarks and I need no more, but this bookmark is really freaking cool. So check it out.
I don't think I could have said that any better, but that is a wrap